Today on part 7 of Courtside's 10-part 2019 NFL preview, talking all about the AFC South, which I believe is the deepest division in the entire NFL. I'll tell you why I have the Jacksonville Jaguars coming out on top, and I'll tell you what Andrew Luck's retirement means for the Colts as well as the rest of the division. So sit back, relax, and take a seat. Courtside. Hello there and welcome to episode 32 of Courtside and part 7 of Courtside's 10-part 2019 NFL preview. I'm your host, Andrew Cohen. If you have missed any of the first 6 parts of this NFL preview, I highly suggest going back and checking out all of those episodes. And if you have been enjoying all the content as of late on the Courtside podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you went ahead and subscribed to the podcast no matter where you may be listening. Additionally, make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter. The handle is @thecourtsidepod. The link will be in the description to the Twitter page. Here's a reminder of how this episode is going to go. I'm going to talk about all 4 teams in the AFC South in the order I think they will stack up in the standings at the end of the season. Again, I'll talk about each team for about 5 to 6 minutes minimum. Some will go a little bit over that. For each team, I'll give you 3 storylines and or players that I'm watching heading into the 2019 season and that I'll continue to watch probably throughout the entirety of the season. I'll also give you a projected record for each of these teams, and to predict all these records, I've gone through every team's schedule, every single one of the games in the 2019 NFL season, and I predicted who would win, who would lose. I didn't predict any ties, but I went through, and it gives me a really good baseline for how I think each team is going to do, right? I incorporated teams playing on a short week, road versus home, division versus out of division. I incorporated all of that, so I do believe I have a very good idea of how all these teams are going to stack up at the end of the year. And I honestly do expect, and I'm pretty confident that the majority, if not all, of these record predictions hopefully will be within a game or 2 of the actual team's record. But without further ado, let's get into the team I have finishing first in the AFC South. I teased it in the intro, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Biggest thing I'm watching with this team this year is Leonard Fournette. His 2018 season was the worst football year of his life. Not just his NFL career, but his entire football career going back to college, high school, and even earlier than high school. Right? He's always been one of the best, if not the best player on the field. That was not at all the case last year. Right? Dealing with injuries, and even when he did play, was very ineffective, very inefficient. Now, I already thought Fournette was going to bounce back this year for a variety of reasons that I'll get into in a couple minutes here. But I read a Bleacher Report article on Leonard Fournette a couple days ago. It came out maybe a week ago. And it talked about, and it really, by the way, changed my outlook for Fournette completely heading into 2019. Now, the article talked about how Fournette exiled himself to Wyoming this offseason, training hard every single day for hours on end. 20-degree weather, tough conditions. There's not really much else to do there besides practice football. You're in the middle of Wyoming. He was there with one of his coaches from LSU, as well as a couple Wyoming University football players in the offseason. Now he's lost weight. He's way more in shape, has a newfound perspective on life. He's just way more mature. He is simply a better football player and a better person from this experience. Right? Last year, he's been suspended multiple times and fined multiple times from his team for personal conduct reasons. And again, he's much more mature, much more in shape, just a better football player and a better person. Now let's move on to the other reasons why I think Fournette's going to have a big 2019 season. Last year, the offensive line suffered from a ton of injuries. 2017 second-round pick left tackle Cam Robinson. 2017 All-Pro left guard Andrew Norwell. Very sturdy, strong center in Brandon Linder. All those guys were on the IR by the end of the year. All of them. That's when Fournette played the majority of his games, by the way, because he missed about the first half of the season with a hamstring injury. So he comes back, and the left tackle's gone, the left guard is gone, the center's gone for the most part. Right? The O-line just could not make holes for Fournette in the running game. But all those guys are back this year. They also went ahead and added a second-round pick at right tackle. So the O-line should be better than ever at creating running holes for Fournette in 2019. Also in 2018, Fournette faced the third highest percentage of stacked boxes in the NFL. 35.5%. Over a third of the time that he was on the field, the defense stacked the box. Now, the guys ahead of him, two of them, were LeGarrette Blount, right? The top two guys, again, Fournette was third. Top two guys, LeGarrette Blount and Royce Freeman. Those teams, the way they ran their offense, right? The Lions and the Broncos respectively, whenever Blount or Freeman came onto the field, they were significantly way more likely to run the ball. Because neither of those guys were big threats in the receiving game. They were also primarily goal line backs, so they come in on the goal line, and all teams are stacking the box on the goal line. So that's how those guys had a higher percentage of stacked boxes against them. But with Fournette, it was really just because the quarterback was maybe the worst starting quarterback in the league. Teams knew if they stopped Fournette, the Jaguars' offense wasn't going to be able to do anything because Blake Bortles could not throw the football and productively run an offense. So, teams stacked the box, stopped Fournette. That's what they did. They stopped the entire Jaguars' offense. But this is why the upgrade from Blake Bortles to Nick Foles is huge for the Jaguars in 2019. It's the next biggest thing I'm watching here. The upgrade from Blake Bortles to Nick Foles. Now listen, Nick Foles, he's not an amazing quarterback, right? He's fine. He's serviceable. But compared to Blake Bortles, holy cow. I mean, Nick Foles is like a Hall of Fame quarterback compared to Blake Bortles. I mean, seriously, Blake Bortles had a pinnacle year last year in terms of stinking it up. I mean, he was just awful. Nick Foles, on the other hand, guy with playoff wins, Super Bowl ring, big game experience, and simply is a guy that can run an offense effectively. He's already begun to form a strong connection with receivers like D.D. Westbrook, who I think is going to have a big year. Also, free agent signing Chris Conley, who they got from the Chiefs. So, for the first time in the last 4 to 5 years, right? For the first time in about 5 years, the Jaguars have a good, serviceable quarterback. When you think about it, right? 4 to 5 years of Blake Bortles. They've had one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league for the last 5 seasons. Blake Bortles at times looked like he couldn't throw a football, much less handle an NFL offense. Now, it's kind of like in baseball when you're in the on-deck circle, right? You put a donut on the bat. Adds a little bit of weight, right? You're taking your practice swings. There's a little bit more weight on the bat. But then you get up to the box. Donut's off the bat. You swing. You're getting a lot more speed on that swing than you were in the box, than you were in the on-deck circle, right? You're swinging faster because you handicapped yourself in the on-deck circle. You get to the real thing, you're swinging faster. I think the upgrade from Blake Bortles to Nick Foles is going to have that type of effect on the Jaguars this year, right? There's not a lot of things you can do with Blake Bortles on the field as your quarterback. And even the things he should be expected to do because he's a starter in the NFL, he couldn't do. Nick Foles can do all those things, right? He's going to be able to hit receivers, short, medium, even sometimes deep, right? He'll be able to get to the line of scrimmage, maybe be able to change some plays, call some audibles. He'll be able to do all that. And it's going to be night and day between Blake Bortles and Nick Foles this year. Additionally, having Nick Foles forces defense to play the pass. They can't stack the box as much as they did last year on every single play for the most part. And that's going to allow Leonard Fournette to run free and really have a big season. Storyline number 3, this defense is still exceptionally strong. I mean, it feels like people are just kind of glossing over it and we've kind of forgotten about the Jaguars defense. No, they're still a really good defense. Second fewest passing yards per game last year against them. Also allowed the second fewest passing touchdowns. Allowed the 5th fewest yards overall and were the 4th best scoring defense. Now, when it came to pass rush and defense against the running game, okay, they're really only middle of the pack. But when I talked about the Browns yesterday, I said there are 3 key ingredients I want on my defense. Number 1, elite pass rusher. Jaguars have Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue. They drafted Josh Allen, pass rusher out of Kentucky in the first round. They're loaded at pass rush. I also want a field general in the middle of the field that's versatile, can do a lot of things, cover, tackle, etc. Myles Jack fits that description perfectly. He just got paid like a top linebacker in the league because he really is one in my mind. So you're set there. I also want a shutdown corner in the secondary, going to take any receiver man-to-man and be able to lock them down. Jalen Ramsey is one of the best corners in the league. He's paired with A.J. Bouye, also a very good corner. So they have all these key pieces. Additionally, they have safety Ronnie Harrison heading into his, I believe, his second year. He flashed at times in 2018. Marcel Darius is still there on the D-line. Very sturdy, steady force on that defense. Jaguars defense, overall going to be one of the top 5 to 10 units in the league. I would guess more like top 5 in 2019. Anyways, I have the Jaguars at 12-4. Yes, I have the Jaguars going from worst to first in the division, finishing with one of the best records in the AFC. They have one of the easier schedules, only 6 games against teams I have finishing over 500. 4 of those 6 games are at home. Listen, the Jaguars are in a deep division. They have the second best quarterback. I think Deshaun Watson's number 1, but I think they have the second best quarterback. But mixing it with the best defense in the division makes them my favorites to win the AFC South in 2019 with a record of 12-4. All right, next up, my second place finishers in the AFC South, the Tennessee Titans. Key thing here, the quarterback battle. The Titans brought in Ryan Tannehill this offseason to be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. I loved this move personally. Now, Mike Vrabel played under Bill Belichick, and one of the things Bill Belichick does every single year is bringing competition for his players. Doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady. Doesn't matter if you're Devin McCourty. Doesn't matter if you're Patrick. Doesn't matter if you're a top player on the team. You're getting competition. Players have to fight for their spot in the starting lineup. They have to fight for their roster spot, and it creates heavy competition, right? Now, Marcus Mariota this year, he's in a contract year. He's never started all 16 games in a single season. Consistently leaves us wanting more by underachieving. Bringing in Ryan Tannehill hopefully kicks Mariota into gear. As I mentioned, contract year for Mariota. If he doesn't perform well, he's not going to get big money. But now with Tannehill, if he doesn't play well, he could lose his starting job. He could end up getting benched. So there's high stakes here, right? And I love that they're creating competition for Mariota because now the stakes are at the highest they've ever been for Marcus Mariota in 2019. Second storyline, the defense. Now, I already said the Jaguars are the best defense in this division. I still believe that. But the Titans' defense is pretty darn good. Talent across the board. You have Jarrell Casey, Cameron Wake, 2018 second rounder, Harold Landry in pass rush. You have Jayon Brown, 2018 first rounder, Rashaan Evans, patrolling the middle of the field as linebacker. Safety, Kevin Byard, was a first-team All-Pro in 2017 and had another good year last year. At corner, Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson. If Malcolm Butler can return to his New England form, the Titans are looking at a pretty good cornerback depth chart. Titans last year, third best scoring defense. They weren't as good as Jacksonville, though, when it came to preventing yards, both on the ground and through the air, and the Titans struggled to force turnovers at a high level. In fact, they had a negative turnover differential in 2018, which is a problem, right? As I mentioned, only 2 of the 12 playoff teams from last year had a negative turnover differential. Ravens were bounced in the first round. Eagles had Cody Parkey made a field goal, would have also been bounced in the first round. Right, so that turnover differential needs to be cleaned up. So I don't think Tennessee's defense is as good as the Jaguars' D, but the Jaguars' D is one of the top 5 in the league. So make no mistake, the Titans' defense very strong heading into 2019. They could leapfrog the Jaguars. They have a lot of young players here that are really promising, though. Storyline number 3, Andrew Luck's retirement. So outside of the Colts, Andrew Luck's retirement maybe had the biggest impact on the Tennessee Titans. You want to know why? Andrew Luck, undefeated against the Titans in his career. Since 2012, Luck has terrorized the Tennessee Titans. All Tennessee Titans coaches had sleepless nights leading into games against the Colts because they couldn't beat Andrew Luck. So I think the Titans went from 0-2 this year against the Colts to 2-0 against them, providing a pretty big boost in their record, which I now have at 10-6. The Titans have again good defense that should allow them to win a lot of games. But for this team to really take it to the next level and win that division, Mariota's going to really have to step it up. I'm not sure I can trust him to do that after 4 years of underachieving and getting hurt pretty quite often. Alrighty, let's move on to the Houston Texans. Now, the thing everybody's been talking about over the past couple days with the Texans making a bunch of trades is the offensive line. You want to know how bad the Texans' offensive line was in 2018? Deshaun Watson was sacked 62 times. Led the league. 62 sacked. 62 sacks. Is tied for 5th all-time in time sacked over the course of a single season. That's horrendous. Holy cow. It was a historically bad offensive line. So the Texans, they went out, traded for Laramie Tunsil, who could be a franchise left tackle, assuming they can lock him up, which is not a guarantee since they decided not to try and negotiate a contract with him before making the trade. Little bit of a mistake on the GM-less Texans part. However, and again, it's a good pickup, but just getting one guy on the offensive line, even if it's at arguably the most important position, it doesn't make it go from the worst in the league to one of the best in the league. No. In my mind, they're still a big ways. The Texans are still a big ways away from having a even good offensive line. I still expect Deshaun Watson to get sacked a lot in 2019. Ideally, he's not getting sacked 62 times. Maybe they can bring that number down a little bit, but this offensive line is still very weak and very, very questionable. Now, the second thing, Jadeveon's coming departure and what impact it has on this defense. Now, I'm sorry. I just don't think the Texans' defense is that good anymore. I mean, the guys they have are aging, like J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, Jonathan Joseph. I mean, outside of Watt, there really isn't anybody to get overly excited about defensively. Now, Watt was able to play a full season in 2018. He was awesome. Loved to see it. But if he were to get hurt this year and miss any period of time, even if it's just a game or two, in the time he misses, the Texans' weak defense is going to get exposed. Even with J.J. Watt and Clowney last year, the Texans ranked outside the top 10 in sacks. So you have two of the guys who you really feel like you see them on the defensive line, like oh god. I mean, like they're scary to go up against. Clowney's gone, right? You only have J.J. Watt left, and if J.J. Watt gets hurt, the pass rush becomes weak. While now listen, the Texans, to their credit, they allowed the third fewest rushing yards last year, 5th most passing yards, 5th best scoring defense. Okay. But that to me is likely to change. I mean, departure of Clowney is huge, and they didn't really get anybody of significance back in return. They got Barkevious Mingo, who was going to be cut. They got another backup who doesn't really mean much in a 3rd-round pick. I could talk about that trade for minutes and hours on end. But overall, the defense to me is going to take a step back this year. Again, they're built up of veterans that are just getting older and are going to be more likely to decline as the years go on. Now, third thing. Deshaun Watson, when are we going to start looking at this guy like one of the league's top quarterbacks? Last year, coming off a torn ACL, 345 for 505 passing, 68.3 completion percentage, 4,165 yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 picks, won 11 games. I mean, those are impressive numbers, especially for, I mean, not just the fact that he's a second-year quarterback, but a second-year quarterback coming off a torn ACL. That's very impressive. Final 6 games last year, down the stretch, fighting for a playoff spot, fighting for the division title. Final 6 games, 144 for 196 passing. That's a 73.5 completion percentage. That is really good. Almost 1,600 yards, 8 touchdowns, 0 picks. 0 interceptions in the last 6 regular season games. I mean, down the stretch, the guy was nails. He was confident as could be down the stretch, and he played really well. He wasn't great in the playoffs against the Colts, but still, overall, if the Texans can build a team around him, especially on the O-line, which, by the way, is something the Colts failed to do with Andrew Luck, and they're paying for it. If the Texans can actually build a team around Watson that's sustainable and can play at a high level, then Watson, I mean, he could, to me, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, even as early as this year or in the next couple years. I have the Texans at 8-8 with their final record. The O-line is still weak, even though they did lock down the left tackle position. Outside of DeAndre Hopkins at receivers, playing 16 games consistently year in, year out, guys like Will Fuller, QT, they can't seem to stay healthy. They can't stay on the field. The number 1 running back is out for the year, Lamar Miller. He's being replaced with the less efficient journeyman Carlos Hyde, who's now on his 4th team in the last calendar year. It's crazy. They also got Duke Johnson, a receiving back for Cleveland. Never handled a huge workload. I think he only had 40 carries last year, which is very low. And finally, the defense, they are going to take a step back. How much of a step back is yet to be seen, and that's why I'm really paying attention to the defense. But they are going to take a step back. So while I love Deshaun Watson, I think this team's okay. The coach is, I think the jury's still out on the coach. I think the team's okay, but I see them falling to a 500 team with an 8-8 record in 2019. And last up on the AFC South train, the Indianapolis Colts. It doesn't matter how many wins they get. Doesn't matter who plays well, who doesn't. The story of this season has already been written for the Indianapolis Colts. It's Andrew Luck retired 2 weeks before the season began. And that was it. That's all, folks. Listen, you can talk up Jacoby Brissett all you want. You can, whether it's Chris Bauer, the GM, or just any sort of NFL fan. Hey, listen, he's good. I have him winning some games. But losing Andrew Luck 2 weeks before the season is an indescribably huge loss. I think Luck was the second best quarterback in the league last year after Patrick Mahomes. There's a clear drop-off between Luck and Brissett. Brissett was in New England for a while, and, living in New England, I got to see a lot more of him than a lot of other guys in the league. He was inaccurate. He could throw the football. He has a strong arm. He can get it to you, but accuracy was his biggest issue. I expect it to still be an issue with the Colts. Also, some of the close games late in the fourth quarter that Andrew Luck was able to pull out, those likely are not winnable games anymore with Brissett under center. The Colts now go from the unquestioned number one quarterback in the AFC South division to likely the third or fourth best, depending on how Mariota plays for the Titans this year. I mean, I would guess that the front office, the coaching staff, heck, even some of the guys in the locker room went from having Super Bowl aspirations, legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, to having questions about how many games this team can win and if they can realistically even make the playoffs. And again, I don't have them making the playoffs. So we got to really see how much the loss of Andrew Luck is going to have an effect on this team. To me, it's going to be a huge loss. Now, storyline number 2 for me is how much will this offense change now that Luck is gone? The Colts offense was a pass-first offense with Andrew Luck. He threw the ball 639 times, the most in his career, and that was coming off of this major shoulder injury that kept him out for an entire season. He threw for the most times in his career coming off this major injury. Now with Brissett, I doubt they're going to throw the ball as much, and if they do, they're going to have a very minimal success. So I think they're going to get the running backs a little bit more involved. Now here's the thing. Marlon Mack only had 195 carries last year. That's not a lot for a number one running back in an offense. The majority of top running backs that are clear-cut lead backs, like Marlon Mack, I mean, they're getting somewhere around 225, 230 carries minimum per game, or over the course of the season. So those extra carries might not seem like a lot, but a few extra carries per game, that's going to take a toll on Mack's long-term production, I would guess. And we'll have to see if he'll be able to handle that role as a true number one running back. And if not, they're going to have to get guys like Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins a lot more involved in the offense. Third thing with this team, is the defense even that good? I mean, people keep telling me about how the Colts roster might be the best in the NFL outside of the quarterback. Which is why, by the way, a lot of people had the Colts as their Super Bowl favorites in the AFC before Luck retired. Me personally, I'm not too sure about the defense. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good defense. It's young, it's up and coming. But I don't know if it's top 10 defense in 2019 like some people are saying. I mean, last year, yeah, they were 10th best scoring defense, 8th best team against the run, but they were they were below average, I think, at stopping the pass. They were average to below average when it came to getting after the quarterback and getting sacks. And also, with the exception of Darius Leonard, who qualifies as an elite defensive player on this team? There's really nobody in my mind that qualifies as an elite defensive player. The secondary is full of a bunch of young unknowns, right? Some good players that are, again, they're young, they're up and coming, but right now, the jury's still out on them. Jabal Sheard is good. He can do a lot of different things. He can line up on the D-line. He can line up at linebacker. He doesn't qualify as elite. I think the next closest thing after Darius Leonard to an elite player on this defense is Justin Houston, who hasn't made a Pro Bowl since 2015. We keep talking about Justin Houston in a lot of cases like it's still 2015. It's just not. So the Colts defense, it will be good, but it won't be as good as the Jags or Titans, in my opinion. I have them at 7-9, which is the best record for a fourth-place team in the league this year, in my mind, at least in my predictions. I don't think Andrew Luck retiring is going to make the sky fall in Indianapolis. But I do think it's going from Luck to Brissett, it's a pretty big drop-off. It's going to cost this team some wins, specifically within the division, against a team like the Titans, as I mentioned. Titans go from 0-2 against the Colts to 2-0, right? Colts go from 2-0 against the Titans to 0-2, right? In a lot of other divisions, they might be okay, right? I think they could finish at higher than 7-9 if they were playing in another division, but the AFC South is their division, one of the deepest divisions. I think it is the deepest division, and you see it with the records, right? It is the deepest division in the NFL in my mind. It's going to be tough for the Colts to get wins. That's why I have the Colts finishing 4th with a record of 7-9. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Courtside. If you have not done so already, go check out parts 1 through 6 of this 10-part 2019 NFL preview here on Courtside. I dive deep into every division, every team. I give you a projected record. You don't want to miss out. Tomorrow, the final divisional episode of the 2019 NFL preview, talking about the AFC West. I have the Raiders maybe winning a few more games than a lot of people are thinking, so you don't want to miss that. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you may be listening. And signing off, this is Andrew Cohen. I'll see you next time.